Because the layers are going to be in the house for at least 14 months, there's going to be a buildup of litter. So to keep the litter at a consistent distance from the feed pan, which is 14 inches, you need to use an adjuster. So an adjuster is simply a piece of board 4 inches long by 1 inch wide. It has 2 holes in it. This is how you set it up. You thread it through one end, then the next end goes through the hook, and it comes up. You come through the bottom of the adjuster, and then you tie a knot. Now that you have set up your adjuster, you are ready to adjust the feed pan. You can adjust up or down, just using one hand. Quite simple. The feed pan should be adjusted to a height of 14 inches. For the broilers, it is usually adjusted to the height of the back of the bird. But for the layers, it needs to be raised a little higher. 14 inches is just about ideal for the layers. If you are using a metal feeder, the adjustment is a little less. Because of the depth of the base, you keep the adjustment to 12 inches high. Remember to maintain this adjustment, because in doing so, you prevent the birds from scratching litter in the feed and also using their beaks to waste the feed on the floor. To get the most out of your layers, you need a good water delivery system. And that's where your plasan comes in. And the plasans usually come fully assembled. But in order to get the most out of your plasan, you need to make a few adjustments. And the first adjustment you need is to fill the ballast with water. Now that you have filled the ballast with water and the plasan is properly weighted, it's time now to adjust the water level in the trough. And to do that, you use the water level adjuster, you turn it down like that, you get more water in the trough, and turn it up a few times, you get less water in the trough. That's how it is adjusted. The plasan comes with an adjuster. This is how it is installed. It is used to maintain the height of the plasan, and it can be adjusted up or down. The recommended height is 16 inches from the ground. In installing the plasan, you need to make sure that the hose is of the correct length. If the hose is short and it's suspended in the air like this, the birds will usually stand on it and the plasan will be dangling like that. And usually the water spills and wet the area below. So you need to make sure that the hose is long enough so it goes down on the ground, resting like that, so that there's no area for the birds to stand on and disturb the water flow in the plasan. The plasan has to be washed daily with bleach and soap. It has to be maintained properly so that the birds will drink water of good quality. To do that, you need 2 containers, one in which you throw only the dirty water and the other in which you take the soap and bleach to wash the plasan. So to wash the plasan, you simply hold the adjuster by the handle and the other hand at the bottom and throw the dirty water off into the dirty container. And then you take your bleach and soap and you wash over the dirty container, washing all surfaces, under the downspout, all around, and then you hold the adjuster again and throw off in the dirty bucket. And you want to repeat that, just ensuring that all areas of the plasan are thoroughly washed with your Scotch-Brite and your soap and water. So to rinse, you simply use the water that is running down along the sides and throw off this into the dirty water as well. And that's it. Your water are washed properly. Having washed the plasan, you need to make sure that you maintain the height, 16 inches on the plasan. And if you see that the cord is slipping, you simply do like this and wrap it over, and that prevents it from slipping any at all. In keeping these practices, you will make sure that the waterers are sanitary and the birds will have clean water free of bacteria to drink each day. To improve the quality of the eggs you produce, it's important to properly install suitable nesting box. You will reduce or eliminate problems such as broken eggs, soiled eggs, floor eggs, or even mortality in the boxes due to excessive birds in the box. And you'll also reduce the amount of litter you use in the nest box. To achieve this, you need to properly construct the nest box and make sure it's properly installed. Each nest hole must be of a specific size. For example, the front should be 10 inches wide and this face of it should be 6 inches deep And this will prevent the birds from scratching out the litter each time. If it's too low, they'll scratch it all out. But when it's 6 inches deep, it will stay in. And the height of the nest box should be just about 14 inches high, while the depth is just about a foot, just about 12 inches deep. And in that way, the bird will be in the hole, comfortable, and only one bird will be accommodated each time. It's good to install them at least a foot off the ground, not on the ground, because the bird will scratch litter inside the nest holes. So this one is 14 inches high, but you can go up to 18 inches high, or anything that is comfortable for you to pick up the eggs. But do not install the nest boxes on the ground. When you notice that the base have a space in between, you have to take them out and you have to open the base a little wider. You have to get the bin out and put it down snug, right? So that it seals around the 4 corners. Now that you have a suitable nest box of the correct dimension and the nest box is properly installed, it's time now to put in litter so that the birds can lay in the nest box. 2 to 3 inches of wood shavings in your nest box and the birds are ready to use it. Notice how clean these eggs are when they're laid in this suitable nest box. They're almost ready to go on the table. Now it's very vital that the layers are properly ventilated, because if they are not, then they become stressed and they utilize too much energy to keep themselves cool and they don't produce well. For our layer house, it should be oriented east to west, but if for some reason on your property you are unable to have that positioning, then you can use the curtaining to minimize the effects of the sun heat on the layers inside the house. So for that, you'll need a multi-purpose tarpaulin or some other curtaining that you can use to keep out direct sunlight, but at the same time to allow proper airflow. How we achieve that is to install the curtain not vertically but diagonally, so that while the sunlight is kept out or the heat is kept out, airflow is able to pass through the house and keep the birds cool. It's important for the birds to have 1.5 square foot per bird. In this case, they do have 1.5 square foot per bird, and as you can see, the birds are evenly spaced. There's no crowding. There's sufficient pans and waterers that allows them to eat and drink comfortably. And there is enough space for the nest boxes as you can see in the center. So the space is very important for them to be comfortable, for them to be laying profitably, and for you to have these birds doing well. It's important in construction to make sure you have no more than 1 block height, which is about 8 inches. If you have 2 block heights, as in this case, what you'll have is the birds congregating in the corner because there is a shadow in here and they lay in the corner. And no matter what you do, whether you put bags to keep them out, you just can't get them out because it's a comfortable dark area. So you need to ensure that you have no more than 1 block height when you're constructing your house, so that the birds do not see a shadow or a shadow cast in the corners and lay along these areas that is too deep. It's very vital in your construction. When birds are hot, they take steps to remain cool. This may lead to a reduction in production. So how can we assist them to stay alive? How can we help them to remain cool during hot weather? Pay attention to these tips. Adequate ventilation. Ensure that there is no obstruction to the airflow. No board, no zinc, no wall obstructing the airflow. Ensure too that you keep just 1 block height so that the litter can stay in, the birds can use it for a dust bath to help keep themselves cool. In addition, make sure that the mesh wire all around is clean. No cobweb, no dust. Make sure the mesh wire stays clean so that the air can go through. Then if the sun is shining into the house, you need to use a curtain to keep out the direct sunlight, because the direct sunlight contributes to more heat in the house. You make sure that the house is the right height. Low roofs may not help. And definitely do not have any birds upstairs. They should all benefit from the floor space where they can help to keep themselves cool on the ground. And if you're going to do a new construction, and you can get that house in a shaded area like under a tree, all the better. It helps the birds to benefit from good ventilation. If you carefully apply these suggestions, your birds will stay alive and cope better with the increasing stress of hot weather. If you see only one louse on the bird, it's time to treat, because it could be an indication that there are hundreds or even thousands of lice on that poor bird. To determine if the birds have lice, simply observe the birds to see if you see signs of scratching, them pecking on themselves. It can be a sign that the birds have lice. But to be certain if they have lice or not is to hold a bird by its wings and lift the feathers, particularly on the legs. Once you lift the feathers, you observe to see if you can find lice on the bird's feathers. You can look on the shaft or on the skin to see the moving lice. So if you observe lice on your birds, treat with Ivomec, 2 milliliters per gallon of water, for drinking water. And you can also use Actelic, which is an insecticide, spray onto the birds, and that will also take care of the lice. So it's important to observe the birds, and you can also go to your farm store and they can tell you what they have available for lice infestation. But make sure to observe your birds carefully and deal with any issues you find, because that can impact significantly on your profitability. Even as you check the birds for lice infestation, you also need to check them for worm infestation. And a good way to do that is to just look at the feces. If you look at the feces carefully, you may see some worms moving. So to keep the birds free from worms, you need to have a good deworming program where the birds are dewormed every 6 to 8 weeks. You can use Ivomec, Safasan, Polywormazine, or Benvit. Use one this time, another the other time, and keep rotating them so that the worms do not develop an immunity to the drug that you use. But whatever you do, make sure that you deworm the birds every 6 to 8 weeks to keep them free from worm infestation.